You've probably heard me say this before, and you're going to hear me say it again if you follow me for any length of time. We don't necessarily do what we want or what we think it's best or what we believe. We do who we are. What I mean by that is that anytime we want to raise our lives to a different level, anytime we want to do something that we've never done before, our biggest resistance and our biggest challenge is not convincing ourselves that we have to do it, is not even gathering the courage to get started or finding reasons why we should get moving on it. The main reason why we get stuck or we don't follow through and we don't get the results that we're after is because we don't see ourselves as the kind of person that does the thing we're attempting to do. It's an identity thing more than a belief thing. And that's why we keep spinning our wheels so often. That's why so often we start processes, like we might start a course or we might start a training, we might start a project, and we will find ourselves sabotaging our progress along the way because there's a disconnect between what we're attempting to do and who we believe ourselves to be. There is one thing that is the starting point of shifting out of that and creating sustainability within all these transformations. See, anytime we're trying to do something we've never done before, anytime we're trying to be someone we've never been before, which should be a daily thing almost, and anytime we're attempting something that feels daunting or challenging, there's a transformation taking place inside of us. There's a shift in who we are, how we see ourselves, and in the way we approach our day to day in order to sustain that transformation that we're looking to create. So today on this episode of Sincerely Speaking, I want to address where to start. Start here. This is the starting point of lasting transformation. So if right now, whenever you happen to listen to this, like I'm recording at the beginning of the year 2024, January 15th to be exact, but if you listen to it later, if at any point in your life you're looking at the possibility of starting something new, of transforming yourself into a brand new person that does brand new things, or transforming your life in any way, then this is the starting point. If you can get this right, then everything else will flow with a lot more ease and a lot more smoothly. So are you ready to find out what the starting point is? And are you ready to implement the steps to get you moving in the right direction? Then stick around to this episode of Sincerely Speaking. Can't wait to share with you.
Hi, welcome to Sincerely Speaking. I'm Marcia Amaro, your self-leadership coach. Now what that means is I'm here to help you rediscover your calling, tap into your greatest potential and strengths, and eliminate those things that keep getting in your way and in the way of your success. So whatever success looks like to you, whether it is in your career, in your business, in your relationships, or in your life in general, I'm here to help you get out of your own way, remove the obstacles, and elevate all of your life to the next level. If you're ready to see everything that you're capable of and see what your life can look like, I invite you to head on over to marciamaro.com and set up a 30-minute clarity and confidence call where we will talk about your mission, your vision, your goals, the things that you're here on this planet to create, what might be getting in the way up until now, and some actionable, amazing ways to get out of your own way, to eliminate all those obstacles and reach the level of success that you've been dreaming of. Are you ready? Are you ready for the next level? Then stick around to this conversation of Sincerely Speaking, and then head on over to marciamaro.com and schedule your 30-minute call. Can't wait to meet you in person. Chat soon.
So if you have listened to my stuff before, or if you have followed me in any way, shape, or form, especially if you're one of my clients in any one of my coaching programs or my courses, then you've definitely heard me say before what the starting point of all lasting transformation is. And when I say it, you're going to go, oh, yeah, I've heard you say that before. And even if you don't know me, even if this is the first time you happen to stumble upon my content, then it's going to be abundantly clear in a minute why I say what I say and why this is the starting point of any lasting transformation. But what I want to do today, beyond just share with you what that starting point is give you 3 areas, 3 things, 3 steps to put in place, 3 ways to implement and to move forward. Because if there's one thing I hate is when gurus and experts and content creators out there tell you, okay, this is what you need to do. And they give you all the what, and then you're sitting there going, that sounds great. You convinced me that's what I need to do, but how on earth do I even get started? So I always try to give you at least 1 or 2 actionable things to do. So if this is your first interaction with me, hi, It's great to meet you. It's great to have you here. Welcome to Sincerely Speaking. And one of the things that you're going to find is that whether it's just me or me interviewing a guest, I make it a point to give you something actionable, something you can start doing right now as soon as you finish watching the episode, so that you can take away from the episode not just motivation, because motivation is nice, but it's fleeting. It doesn't last. It just, yeah, it just takes you, like, it sparks something, but then it dwindles, it like dies down. So what I want to give you is some actionable things that you can do, that you can start implementing today, and that will carry you through until we meet again next week. We drop one episode every Tuesday. It's usually around noon, sometimes a little earlier, sometimes a little later, but every Tuesday. So if you come back Wednesday, for sure you're going to see a new episode. And we try to drop not just some ideas on how to move further, faster towards the success, whatever success means to you, towards the success that you're striving to get. But we also give you communication tips. We also give you leadership tips. We also help you implement some of these things, so that as you listen to the episodes here on Sincerely Speaking, you tap into the best version of you, so you can be your best and your highest in every area of your life. So without further ado, here is where you start. Here is the starting point. Anything worth doing, anything worthwhile, anything that is going to require be going beyond what you've done before, will start with awareness. Awareness. That's where we start. That is the starting point. If we are not fully aware of where we are, where we really want to go, and what is getting in the way, what is the gap, what is missing, then any effort that we make is going to be, it's going to miss the mark in one way or another, because we're either trying to start from the incorrect point, or we're trying to move in a direction that is not going to take us where we want to go. So when you think about a GPS, and you think about what does the GPS need in order to give you the route to get where you want to go, well, it needs to know where you're at, and it needs to know what is the final destination that you're trying to get to, right? So when we don't have awareness, we're either guessing at the direction in which we want to go, or we're trying to move forward without having a clear starting point in mind. Now, you've seen the GPS when it goes rerouting, rerouting, right? It's because either we're moving in a direction that wasn't the original route that was traced, right? Or because somehow the connection was lost and the GPS no longer knows where you are at the moment. So in order for the GPS to give you correct and accurate instructions on how to get to your destination, it has to be able to tell at all times where you are exactly, and it needs to be able to know exactly where it is that you're headed. Right? So awareness is that for us. It's like those settings in the GPS that allow the GPS to trace the best route. It's the starting point, knowing exactly where you're starting from, and it is the destination, knowing exactly where you're going. If we don't have those two pieces, then the GPS can't do anything to help you. And it was even worse when we were operating by maps. I'm old enough to know what it's like to drive without a GPS and to have to use a paper map. In fact, I often tell the story of my honeymoon, where my husband and I went to from Puerto Rico to California for our honeymoon to Anaheim. But at one point, we wanted to drive from Anaheim to LA, and I was the navigator. I was in charge of the map. So we pulled out the map, we figured out where our hotel was, right? So we put a little dot where the hotel was, and we looked at where we wanted to go, which was downtown LA, and we saw the route and we traced it and we figured out where we wanted to go. And we kind of talked about it, but then when we got in the car and started driving, I fell asleep. And I had the map, and my husband was driving. And we were newlyweds, so he didn't want to wake me. He was afraid to wake me. So he let me sleep. And by the time I opened my eyes, we were completely lost. We had missed our exit. We didn't know where we were exactly. And it was a total mess. So, what did we have to do in order to get to our destination? We had to stop and first figure out exactly where we were, so that we could retrace the route on the map and figure out how to get there. So it's the same thing with anything that you want to accomplish. Anything that you have set as your yearly goal, your quarterly goal, however you set your goals. I set my goals for 12 weeks. So I do 12-week years. If you haven't read that book, you should. But anyway, I do 12-week years. So I need to know where I'm starting my 12 weeks and where I want to end them. And that end point of my 12 weeks has to match where I want to end in a year, and it has to match where I want to end eventually, right? My ultimate goal, what I really want my life to be all about. And so I just say that to say that awareness is the starting point, because it is what gives us the coordinates. It is what gives us the understanding of where we are and where we want to go. And it is what we're going to use as a filter and a gauge in order to move forward in an effective way that really propels us forward and towards the things that we want and not the things that we don't want, right? Because, and we're going to talk more about this in the third point, in the third step, but very often we operate more based on what we don't want and where we don't want to end up. And it's like, I've never been inside a racing car and I don't intend to. They scare me a little bit, but I've heard from several people the illustration that when race car drivers are in the middle of a race, the worst thing that they can do is focus on the wall that they don't want to hit. Because if they start thinking and focusing on the wall they don't want to hit, they will eventually hit it. So what they need to do is focus on where they do want to go and not where they don't want to go. And we will, like I said, talk a little bit more about this later. But awareness is that piece that allows us to understand what we do get to focus on and what we do get to use as a filter to decide whether the effort we're putting towards something is worthwhile or whether we're just busy but not really effective, not really moving forward in the direction in which we want to go. So awareness is the starting point of lasting transformation. Awareness is where we get to sit for a minute, probably more than a minute, and figure out where we are, where we really want to go, what steps might be in the middle, what obstacles might be in the way before we even get started. So, very often, especially when we're faced with a brand new thing, we jump into things without really taking the time to bring awareness into the space. And that's when we end up spinning our wheels. That's when we end up taking one step forward and three steps back. That's when we end up not being able to follow through with some things. Because as we start doing the things, we start second guessing and doubting whether those things are really taking us in the right direction, whether they're really the things that we're supposed to be doing, and even whether they are worthwhile or not. So awareness is that starting point. It's the start here. It's that little guide in the map, right? That says you are here. And it is also what allows us to see where our destination is, where we're trying to get to, and allows us to trace the best possible route. Now, going back to the GPS analogy before we get into the steps, there are very often moments in which the GPS reroutes because there might be a better alternative, right? Or reroutes because there was a detour that we took because it was necessary. Like this past weekend, I live in the West Palm Beach area in Florida, and I was over in Tampa, opposite coast of the state, with my daughter because she had a chorus event. And at one point, we were driving to a certain destination, but I needed to make a stop because I needed to use the restroom, right? When I went in there, the map started rerouting because I took a detour, but that detour was necessary. So I'm saying that to say that as we work on the steps to awareness and as we talk about how awareness is important and how we need to be clear on where we're starting and where we want to go, those are the two most important things. The route can change. You can have detours, you can have blocks, you can have unexpected stops. That's fine as long as you're still clear on where you started and where you want to go, right? And if you make a detour or stop, where you are at the moment and where you still want to go so that you can continue to trace the best route to that destination, right? So it's okay to take some detours. It's okay to have some moments when you feel like you're going backwards for a minute. But as long as you are headed in the right direction, as long as you still have sight of where your destination is, you can always reroute. You can always start over. Just make sure that you know where you're starting back from. Make sense? All right. So the three steps of awareness, the three steps are going to help us become aware. And again, it's not about 100% clarity. I think that can paralyze you more than help you. It's about an understanding, right? Of understanding enough to have enough information to operate from, to have enough information to move forward from, and to have enough information to not get bogged down by whatever might be around that might be a little confusing. Just know, okay, this is where I'm at and this is where I want to go. That's all I need to know right now. Then I will start tracing my route and start moving in that direction. So the first step is to get curious. Get curious. Curiosity is one of those traits that we don't give credit to enough, but that could make or break any endeavor, anything that you're trying to do, any goals that you have, any New Year's resolutions that you might have started, and maybe 2 weeks in, you're already going, right? I don't know that I really want to do this. I don't know that I'm really going to get to it. Curiosity is one of those traits that is going to help you get into a space of understanding where you're coming from, what has gotten in the way in the past, what might get in the way now, and whether you really want to go in the destination that you think you want to go in. Because I don't know about you, but I've had many, 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 many moments in which I start heading in a specific direction. And once I get there or I get close to it, I go, wait, this is not really this is not really what I thought it was going to be. This isn't really what I wanted. Anybody else? Don't leave me hanging. I know you've probably done that before, right? And you're like, I don't know that that's really what I want to dedicate the rest of my life to, or that's not really where I want to spend the next year or 10 years or whatever the case may be, right? So curiosity is that one trait that is going to help you avoid a lot of that, because curiosity leads you to asking the right questions and leads you to observing without really judging, just wanting to understand and wanting to see. If you've ever been next to a 2 year old, they are all curiosity. That is their main trait. That is what they do the most. And it kills me that as adults, we often destroy curiosity because we get tired of answering the questions, right? It's me? No. And they're going, why? And you're like, please stop. But if we can bring back that curiosity. Now, there's one thing I will say. Little kids ask why all the time. Why is the worst question that we can ask as adults? Because as adults, why keeps us spinning, wanting to understand the fault or the causal effect, right? So, what caused it? Where did it come from? Why is it that way, right? So, we're trying to understand the origin of it. And very seldom does that help. And very seldom do we get to the answer, the true answer for that, right? And it is okay at times to ask why, but only when you're trying to understand your reasoning behind something. Why do I want to do this? Why is this important to me? Why is this now or never? A now or never type of situation. Why is this essential in my life, right? So when you're trying to get to your own baseline, to your own um, understanding of why something is important to you, then yeah, awesome. Simon Sinek had it right. Know your why and know it well and know it deeply and know it intimately enough so that when you are questioning your motives, when you're questioning what you're doing, you can go back to that why. But when I'm talking about curiosity, I'm talking about other questions besides why that are going to help you understand really your motivation, your determination, and the direction in which you want to go. So some of those questions could be like, what do I do? Right? What do I typically do when faced with certain circumstances? What do I typically do when I want something? What do I typically do when things don't go my way? Right? When do I do the things that I want to do? When it's the best time for me to do certain things. Like for me, I love doing things late at night. Not the best, but I love doing things late at night. So that's important for me to start getting curious around why. Why is it that I get like that? Why is it that late at night is the best thing for me? When do I do things? What starts certain behaviors for me? What are some of the things that instigate me to do certain things? What are some of the reasonings behind certain things, right? And the curiosity piece has to do also with getting to the point where when something happens, you go, that's interesting. Let me explore this a little bit, right? And that is going to lead you to a number of questions. But the idea behind curiosity is that, that's interesting. Let me explore and see what this is all about. Let me explore and see what the reaction is and where it came from. Let me explore and see what triggered this particular thing, what started me doing this particular thing. When you start noticing things like, for example, for me, procrastination is a big, big issue. If left to my own devices, I will find very creative ways to procrastinate even the most important tasks, even the most important things, right? And I have a million excuses for the procrastination that justify me procrastinating, right? And when I got curious around it, when I started seeing, okay, why? What is it that is triggering this procrastination? When is it that I start getting into this habit of doing anything but? What things cause me to fall into procrastination? I finally realized that I procrastinate because I am a perfectionist. And perfectionism is not good. And we might talk more about that. I believe I have an episode on perfectionism. Anyway, but perfectionism is not good. Perfectionism stems from fear of being rejected, from fear of not looking good, from fear of not doing it right. And so when I realized that my procrastination is a symptom, right, of the underlying disease of perfectionism, of that fear of not wanting to mess things up, then I started to figure out ways to work around it and figure out ways to help myself understand that procrastination is a cue that I get to bring myself to a space where I can just do it imperfectly and just get it out into the world and forgive myself for anything that seems less than perfect and not try to anticipate what anybody else might think of it. Just do it because I know it's what I need to do at the moment. Make sense? So start getting curious around the things that you want, around the things that typically stop you, around some of the other things that we're going to talk about in the second step, right? But start getting curious, and anything that happens, anything that comes up, instead of beating yourself up, right? When you have that knee jerk reaction of, ah, why do I do this? I'm so stupid. Why do I stop yourself and go, huh, that's interesting. I wonder where that came from. I wonder what caused that. I wonder where I thought this would take me or what I thought this would do for me, right? And just get curious around it. Just, huh, that's interesting. I wonder. That whole process is curiosity. Make sense? All right. If it helps, write it down. The second step after you get curious is notice. And I stopped myself several times while I was talking about getting curious because they run together. They're very close to each other. Once you start getting curious, then you start noticing a number of things. But when I say notice, I want you to be deliberately and consciously paying attention to the answers to the curiosity so that you can start identifying and noticing specific things. And I want you to notice, for example, patterns. What are some patterns that you notice in the way that you behave, in the way that you do things? Do you always find that unless your desk is perfectly clean, you don't really get to work on what you need to do? Do you always find that whenever you're about to start working, you get hungry and you go and get a snack? Do you notice that whenever your spouse comes in and they start talking to you, you start getting all aggravated because you're expecting all the negative rundown of their day? Do you notice that when your kids walk in the room, you're so busy that you don't even stop to look up at them? Do you notice, right? What things do you notice as patterns? Things that you do repeatedly, things that you probably do without even thinking about them, things that you do automatically and that you do consistently enough to notice them happen time and time and time again as you're getting curious. So start noticing those patterns, because when you start noticing those patterns, then you can figure out which patterns are worth keeping and which patterns need to be reframed or replaced. Now, here's something I am going to say really quickly, and this is not the space to dive into this deeply, but I want you to understand this. When you have a pattern that you notice, you are not going to be able to just eliminate it overnight. You have to replace it with something that is productive. If you don't try to replace it, it's going to come back because an empty space will look to be filled. Anyway, I'll leave it there. So notice patterns, triggers, things that trigger you to do certain things that in your curiosity you're noticing are not the most helpful, or that are not leading you in the right direction, or that are not causing you to show up as your best self. What are those triggers? So start noticing what things cause you to get really aggravated, what things cause you to jump and pounce on people, right? What things cause you to be less than nice? What things cause you to procrastinate again? What things cause you to waste time, energy, money, resources? What things pull your attention away from the productive and helpful things, right? And then start noticing those triggers. And then finally, notice your defaults. What are your knee jerk reactions to certain things? What are your default states in certain areas? What are your default emotions to certain things, right? Like the more I do this work, the more I realize that frustration is my default reaction to anything that feels uncomfortable or that I don't feel I'm really good at. So frustration is one of my default reactions, one of my default emotions. So notice all those things, pay attention to them. Don't ignore them. Don't try to stop feeling them either. It's not a matter of blocking them or suppressing them. It's a matter of really noticing them, welcoming the understanding that they're there, and then figuring out, is this helpful? Is this not? What can I do then to replace the things that are unhelpful? And what can I do to replace, to encourage and expand the things that are helpful and that move me in the right direction. And then finally, step 3 is define. Define. And I am going to ask a question that I have found is the hardest question for most people to answer straight out. What do you want? What do you want? And I kind of hinted at this earlier, but it's very easy for us to tell to talk about what we don't want. We can very easily list all the things we don't want. I don't want to be tired. I don't want to be in debt. I don't want to be frustrated. I don't want to stay in this job forever. I don't want to whatever, right? We can define that I don't want to very, very easily, very quickly, and we can gather a list of 20 or 30 things that we don't want in a second. But when it comes to what do you want? What do you really want? Like I've asked this question of so many people, and most of them start with, well, I don't want to. And I'm like, no, that's not what I asked. I asked, what do you want? And the reason why this is so important is because we get to define what success looks like for us, and we get to define what that final destination is. Remember the GPS analogy? Once we are clear and aware, we get curious and we have the baseline, we understand where we're starting from. The next thing we get to figure out is where do we want to go? And if we don't know what we want, then that's going to be really hard to do because it's going to be like staring at that wall when you're a race car driver, right? It's like saying, I don't want to hit the wall. I don't want to hit the wall. I don't want to hit the wall. And you hit the wall, right? So the way to avoid hitting the wall is to know where you do want to go, right? So focusing on, okay, I'm going to hit that curve. I'm going to make that curve perfectly. I'm going to make it to the other side of that curve. I'm going to make it to I don't know, the pit stop. That's what it's called. I know very little about sports, guys. Anyway, I'm going to make it to the pit stop. That's where I'm going to make it. I'm not going to hit, no, don't even think about the wall because the moment you start thinking about the wall, that's where you end up. That's where your focus goes, right? So understanding and defining what do you want? It's key to any lasting transformation because that's the only way for you to make sure that the route that you trace is going to take you in the direction that you actually really want to go. Make sense? Other things to define is what is helpful to you, right? So out of the emotions, out of the experiences, out of the thoughts, out of the questions that you ask, out of the default settings that you've been noticing in your life, what is helpful and what isn't? The things that are helpful, nourish them, continue to use them, write them down so that you have them as alternatives for when things that aren't helpful pop up. And then whatever isn't helpful, what can you replace it with? What can you replace it with? Right? What can you do to change it so that it is no longer what you fall into and what you rely on, what you default and knee-jerk reaction go to, right? So the 3 steps in order to bring that awareness that it's a starting point for lasting transformation. Get curious, notice things, and then define. Define. And once you have those 3 steps in mind, then you can start outlining the path to the transformation that you're looking to create. And you can start redefining your identity based on these new defaults that you're creating as you replace the unhelpful ones with helpful ones. And for a more practical application of all of this, here's what I would suggest that you do. If you want to take me up on this, just get a regular sheet of paper, fold it in at least 4, right? So half and half again. If you can do it so that it's like a little accordion that ends up with 6 or 9 pieces, then even better. And as your day goes by and you start experiencing the things that we talked about, right? You start experiencing, oh, I reacted in a way that wasn't the best. Let me see if I can get curious around, that's interesting. I wonder what caused me to act in that way. Write those things down on one of the little pieces that you just created on a sheet of paper. Put it back in your pocket. The next time you notice something else, like carry it with you. And for at least 2 to 3 days, trace, trace your defaults. Trace the things that you do automatically. Trace the things that you haven't been curious around before. Trace the things that you are noticing as patterns, as triggers, as defaults. Get really curious around them, right? And then take some time after the 2 or 3 days to look at that sheet of paper, figure out what really are the patterns, the things that are repeatedly on that paper. Think about which are helpful and which aren't. And for the ones that are not helpful, start thinking about first, how can you be even more aware when they happen, right? Like really start noticing those things, really get curious about when those things start, and then start thinking about what you can replace them with. Like, for example, for me, anytime now that I see myself getting into procrastination mode, what I do is I sit down and I do the next thing on my to-do list. And I don't move until that thing is done. Because once I do one thing, then I have the momentum to do the next. And then the procrastination is gone, right? So the moment I notice that I'm going to get a snack or I need water or I'm cleaning my desk, I go, nope, sit down, do the first thing. Once that thing is done, then you can decide if you still want the water or still want to clean the desk, right? And that's what I do. So figure out ways to replace those things that are unhelpful. I hope this has been helpful and valuable to you. I have really enjoyed sharing this with you. I would love to know what it is that you are working to transform in your life this year, this month, this quarter, this day. What is it that you're working to get into the space of lasting transformation that you're going to apply all these concepts of awareness to? So make sure to write me a comment and let me know I'm working on this, I'm working on that. And if you would like support in getting to that space where you understand what that transformation is that you're working towards, if you want support around this awareness piece, getting curious, noticing, and defining some of these concepts, then make sure to take me up on the offer for that 30-minute free clarity and connection and confidence call. And we will help you figure all these things out. It's directly with me. It's not with someone on my staff. It's directly you and I talking for 30 minutes to clear these things up and to get you in a space of awareness and clarity. So head on over to marciamara.com, schedule that call, and make sure to check out all the other things on there while you're there, and share this with someone in your life that you love. And until next time, this has been Marcia Amaro, and this has been Sincerely Speaking. Have an outstanding rest of your week. Bye.
I hope you have found as much value and impact in this conversation as we found in creating it for you. If you have, then go ahead and share this with someone else in your life that you know might find it valuable. And in the meantime, don't forget about my offer to head on over to marciamaro.com and schedule your free 30-minute clarity and confidence call. We will talk through all your dreams, all your plans, all your goals, the things that might be getting in the way. And if it makes sense for both of us, I might invite you to join me in one of my programs or one of my coaching packages, but there's no obligation, and I promise you that this will be the best 30 minutes you've spent in a long, long time. So again, head on over to marciamaro.com, set up that time to chat, and I will see you on the other side. And in the meantime, share, subscribe, like, and I will see you next week here on Sincerely Speaking. Thank you.